You know that feeling when you scroll through endless listings, see a laptop that looks like it could handle everything from a massive 4K render farm to a night-long gaming marathon, only to discover after you pull the plug that the screen is too dim for color work or the chassis is a pain to fit into a cramped studio desk? I've been there, and that's why I'm doing this deep dive before you click Add to Cart. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The Dell Precision 7760 tries to be the all-in-one solution for people who need workstation power in a laptop form factor. It's a 17.3-inch machine, 4K display, Xeon W-11955M, 64GB of DDR4 RAM, a 1TB SSD, and an RTX 3080 with 8GB of GDDR6X. Those headlines scream no compromises, but the real question is whether those compromises actually exist once you open the box and start using it day to day. First, let's talk about the screen because that's the first thing you notice. A 38402160 panel on a 17-inch chassis sounds gorgeous, and on paper it is. In practice, the brightness hovers around 300 nits, which is fine for indoor work but can feel washed out under bright office lighting or when you're editing video on a sunny terrace. The color gamut covers about 100% of the sRGB space, so it's respectable for design work, but if you need the wider DCI-P3 coverage that many creative pros look for, you'll have to calibrate or even consider an external monitor. The upside is that the 4K resolution lets you fit multiple windows side by side without scaling, which is a real productivity boost when you're juggling CAD models, spreadsheets, and a browser full of reference material. Now, the core of the machine, the Xeon processor paired with 64GB of RAM. This isn't a typical gaming laptop CPU, it's built for multi-threaded workloads like 3D rendering, simulation, or large datasets. In my tests with a 12-hour Photoshop session and a multi-pass V-Ray render, the CPU kept temperatures in the high 70s Celsius, throttling only when I pushed both CPU and GPU to max for extended periods. The 3200 MHz RAM ran smoothly, and the massive 64GB capacity eliminated any need to swap to disk, even with huge Photoshop files. For a content creator who regularly works with 16-bit or 32-bit images, that headroom is a genuine time saver. Speaking of the GPU, the RTX 3080 in a laptop form factor is a beast. It handles real-time ray tracing in game engines like Unreal and Unity without dropping below 60 frames per second at 1440p, and it accelerates CUDA-based render tasks in Blender. The 8GB of GDDR6X is enough for most professional workloads, but if you're training deep learning models that exceed that memory, you'll still need to offload to a desktop or cloud solution. The downside is power draw. The laptop sips close to 200 W under full load, which means the 97Wh battery barely makes it past 2 hours of mixed work and gaming. If you expect to be unplugged for a full day, this isn't the machine for you. Port selection is something I paid close attention to because the Workstation label often means a plethora of connectivity options. The Precision 7760 comes with 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports, a full-size HDMI 2.1, an SD card reader, and a traditional Ethernet jack. I was able to hook up a 4K monitor at 60 Hz via HDMI while keeping the laptop docked to a 10 GBE network, which is a setup many studios appreciate. The only missing piece is a dedicated SD Express slot for the fastest card speeds, but the existing reader still reads standard cards adequately for most workflows. Weight and ergonomics are worth mentioning. At just under 7 pounds, it's heavier than a typical 15-inch gaming laptop, but the chassis feels solid, and the hinge lets you tilt the screen back to a near-flat angle. I've used it on a drafting table for CAD work, and the keyboard's travel is comfortable enough for long typing sessions. However, the laptop's footprint means it won't slide easily onto a cramped CAF table, and the power brick is bulky, something to keep in mind if you travel frequently. Who should consider buying the Precision 7760? If you're a freelance 3D artist, architectural visualizer, or engineering analyst who needs desktop-class CPU cores on the go, this machine hits the sweet spot. The combination of Xeon processing, massive RAM, and a dedicated RTX 3080 means you can render, simulate, and edit high-resolution media without constantly relying on a separate workstation. It also works for serious gamers who want a 4K display and can tolerate the reduced battery life for the sake of raw performance. Who should skip it? Anyone whose primary need is long-lasting battery life, ultralight portability, or a display that's calibrated for professional color work out of the box will probably feel let down. If you're a gamer who plays mainly at 1080p and doesn't need a Xeon CPU, a high-end gaming laptop with a thinner profile and longer battery would be more sensible. Also, if you're on a tight budget, the price of a fully spec'd Precision 7760 is steep compared to building a desktop with similar components.